Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Retry Policy here. In today's video guys, I'll be trying, this will be a playlist where I'll be teaching on some PostgreSQL, right, for beginners. All right, we'll go from beginners level to intermediate or advanced depending on how far we're gonna take the video, right? Well, we need to start from the basics. So in today's video, we'll be talking about what a database is. So for we to know what a PostgreSQL is, we actually need to know what a database is, right? So without any further ado, let's get started. So what is a database, if you ask me? So you might see my screen here real quickly. All right, a database is an organized place where data is stored, managed, and retrieved when needed. All right, so think of a database like a box. All right, so you've got a bunch of things. Okay, for instance, let's take this for instance. So see, I've got this right now. Let's assume that the whole cotton board here are a bunch of data. And then this is a database. All right, so we store them in a database. All right, so all of these things now, we're going to see them as records. We're going to see some as, informations of different kind of people. All right, similar related, all right, but different type of people record here. So a database is store those things, and then whenever we need them, we go there. All right, we say, okay, I want something. All right, we'll pass the information, and then we search for it. Okay, so okay, I found it. Okay, so we retrieve it. All right, so we can always manage. You say, okay, well, we need to like remove something from here, we need to edit something, we need to update the skin color of this. All right, so we update it. So that's the whole purpose of a database. All right, a database stores information, so it allows us to retrieve it later. All right, to manage it. All right, whatever we want to do with it. So that's the whole work of the database. Now when I'm done with it, or maybe I updated it or something, then what, I could take it back there. I could then save back the updated data back in our database, but I could delete it also. I could say, okay, I don't want this guy in my record no more. So when I take it out, it's been deleted, so it's no more in the record, right? So that is the whole point of a database, right? So a database, more just look at it like a container holding related data together. It's going to make it easy, right? When a client comes to your website, or when they sign up, where do all this information go to? Where do they store this information? You don't store them in the browsers, all right? For security purposes, you can't store them in the browser, right? For efficiency, the client might always want to change the PC. Do you want to store them in their PC? No. So that's what a database comes in. When they give you their input, their details, all right, we send them to the backend, and the backend sends those data back into the database. All right, so whenever the client comes back, okay, and then they want to log in, then we go check, oh, are you in the database? We search for the client in the database. When we find the client, then we do some authentication and some XYZ things that we're going to find out later on, and then we retrieve back the user's information, and then we say, yeah, I found it, this is it. All right, that's the whole point of a database. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so now, well, imagine database like a school too. You can use the database. All right, so for a school, you already know what's going to happen. All right, you do can have the student record. All right, you can have the record of the teachers. All right, for the student, you can have the names of the student, the classes, and then their schools for the test. All right, for the teachers, you need a record. All right, for them, so every of these things will be stored in the database. All right, so you know that when you go to the database, you know exactly what to look at to get something. All right, so you might say, why not just use everything maybe like a spreadsheet or like Excel or something? Well, it's good, but then it's not efficient, right? You want something that's going to be faster. You want something that's going to be easily retrieved whenever you need it, right? And then you want something which much more security, because these are people's data from different places they are dealing with. And then for someone to trust you with their data, you need to also make sure that the security is very strong, because hackers can come and hack your database. We can have the SQL injection, all of those things, right? So types of database, there are two types of database that we're going to look at. All right, so we have the relational database, and then we have the non-relational database. All right, so relational database are data that are arranged in tables. All right, they're always arranged in tables connected to each other. All right, so in these tables we have the rows and then we have the columns. All right, but then examples of the relational database, we have the PostgreSQL, we have the MySQL, we have the SQLite, we have this SQL, we have the server, Oracle, bunch of them out there. You can Google on the internet to see them. All right. And then for non-relational database, we have the MongoDB, we have Redis, we have Cassandra, we have Dynamo. Right. These ones, they don't store them in tables. All right. They store them in document forms, in key value pairs. All right. They store them in graphs. All right. So you need to know when to use this or that. But in this video, we'll be focusing on non-relational database because PostgreSQL is a relational database. All right. So take for instance what you can see here on the screen. All right. This is a relational database. I told you relational database uses table. All right. So in one table can be connected to the other table. All right. So instead of keeping one whole thing, right, in the whole, say we want a user, we need the user address, we need the user details, we need the user email, where the address can be, in the address you can have the states, the country, the origin, the street. All right. And then you want to know maybe what card does the user write. Instead of keeping all of these things in one whole table, we say, okay, we can split it. All right. So we have, this is going to know, okay, with the user. All right. So we need the username, the age. All right. And then maybe we can say the age and then the gender. Okay. And then now we have a link that's going to link the user to the address. So and we have a new table for the address, but then they are connected together. All right. So that's what relational database offers to us. They give us table that's easy for us to relate different data together, similar kind of data, to relate them together. Okay. Now, take for instance a student. All right, a student will have a name, and then a student will also have a class, and then we want to also know the result of the student, but we don't want to store all of these things in one table, so we create a new table for results. All right, but now every student will have an ID. Right, every student is going to have an ID here, so that's the ID is what we're going to use to connect each student to their result. Okay, so here now this is a result. So how do we know whose student result is this? That's why we have a student ID connecting or pointing to this student here. So we know that, okay, when we fetch this result, we know, oh, student ID, we'll search for in the student, and then we'll find the ID. Oh, it belongs to that in just one. So easy, right? And then we want to know what subject does the student offer. Okay, so we know this is the ID for the subject. Every subject has to be unique, right? And then we want to know, oh, the name of the subject, the teacher that teaches the subject, right? So this is how relational database work. Right? So why do we choose relational database? So for structure, right, it helps us, like we said, the table, gives us clean structure. Okay, you can connect A to B, you can connect B to C, you can connect back C to A. Right, so the structure is good. Consistency, you have good rules that follows. All right, you can do relationships there. We have the SQL part, we have transactions, we have reporting, all of these things we're going to see later on in the videos. Okay, I just needed to make sure you understand what a database is, because it's very important that you understand what a database is before you want to even move to start scripting SQL. So for a non-relational database, okay, now I told you we have two types of database, the relational and then non-relational. We already said that relational database table, good. Non-relational document, key pairs, key values, right? Graph, and all of those good stuff. Okay. Now, relational versus non-relational. All right, relational database are best for structured data, strong relationship between records. Okay, you know that these records are always like the same. Okay, data rules and consistency matters. Excellent for report and business apps. Okay, we already set some examples: PostgreSQL, MySQL, and SQLite. All right, and then for non-relational database, all right, for MongoDBs, all right, it can be flexible, easy changing data. The JSON, or if you're familiar with the JSON or JSONB, you know what I'm talking about. All right. So why does Postgres fall? Like we said, Postgres is a relational database, all right? But Postgres is an open source. Open source means it's managed by, people or contributors or, developers on the internet, making it free to use, all right? PostgreSQL stores data in tables, like we already said, because it's relational, lets you connect these tables and lets you query data using SQL, all right? So why do developers choose PostgreSQL? Because it's free and open source, all right? You can always run it easily, quickly. You can spin up, okay? It's reliable, okay? Companies, all right, like big companies use PostgreSQL, so it's reliable, right? Still gives you the SQL standard, the select, the insert, the update, helps you, to do hands-on real project. It's powerful and it has got a lot of large communities. All right. So remember what we said, when a user comes to your website, all right, so a user does something, the client sends it to the backend, maybe through an API. All right, the backend looks, oh, do I need a database for this? Yes, it goes to Postgres, fetches it. Postgres sends it back to the backend, and then the backend say, okay, it's good, and then we send it to the client. Okay, so what are the key takeaway from here? A database is an organized system. Remember we said database helps to organize record and data? Yes, good. A database is an organized system for storing and retrieving data, right? Relational database stores in tables, okay? Non-relational database stores data in a more flexible form, like JSON object, okay? Postgres is a powerful relational database that uses SQL for its interaction and for the scripting. All right, so guys, that's all I have for you for database. Okay, do so guys, please, if you've gained value in this video, please, I beg you, like and subscribe, drop a comment. The next video on how we're going to be downloading Postgres in our computer will be coming up. There'll be a playlist in the link, so you can always link to the next video. Please guys, like and subscribe. Thank you. See you in the next video.